Welcome, everyone, to the Q&A session for our upcoming course, Find Healing and Resilience in Ancestral Wisdom, this 7-week journey to release the trauma of your lineage and change the direction of your legacy. I'm Lisa Bonis, and I'm so excited to be hosting this Q&A conversation for the Shift Network, where we'll explore the teachings of Rabbi Tirzah Firestone and address questions about her upcoming 7-week course, Find Healing and Resilience in Ancestral Wisdom, which begins Monday, March 30th. And a little later, I'll explain how you can participate in the course, even if you can't attend the live sessions. But first, I want to introduce our guest. Rabbi Dr. Tirzah Firestone, PhD, is an author, Jungian psychotherapist, and founding rabbi of Congregation Neve Kodesh in Boulder, Colorado. Ordained in 1992, she's a leader in the International Jewish Renewal Movement. Her groundbreaking work, Wounds into Wisdom, Healing Intergenerational Trauma, demonstrates how trauma residue passes from generation to generation and how it can be transformed. Now, Rabbi Emerita of her congregation, Tirzah maintains a private practice in depth psychology and teaches nationally about modern applications of ancient wisdom and ancestral healing, and how to transform patterns of suffering from our past and bring forth clarity, wisdom, and blessings for ourselves and those who come after us. And in just a few minutes, we're going to open up for your questions. But first, I want to welcome Tirzah, who's going to begin our conversation by leading us in a heart-opening meditation. Welcome, Tirzah. It's so great to see you again. Welcome.
Hi, Lisa. Great to see you. Okay, well, the ancestral healing work always grounds itself in the moment first, in what is well and what is resourceful for us. It grounds us in our bodies and in our hearts, and no matter what is going on around us, and especially now in this these turbulent weeks right now, this is so important. So let me begin with a brief meditation that is drawn from Heart Math, that is used for grounding in our hearts, in our most beautiful and essential center. So if you would, bring your attention inside. You can close your eyes or keep them open, that's fine. I like to actually touch myself at my sternum, at my breastbone, the bone just behind which the heart lies. And as my teacher, Stephen Levine, used to say, all of us humans have experienced loss, whether it is an animal or our high school friends or some other losses that are much graver. And we carry these losses in our breastbone somatically. So you can just feel up and down your breastbone for a moment and feel if there's a sore spot. And just land yourself there, touching yourself with compassion and gentleness. And begin, if you would, to take a breath and extend your breath and smooth it out as if you were breathing into a count of 4. So breathing in 1, 2, 3, 4, pausing just a tiny second at the top, and then out 4, 3, 2, 1. Just try that as if you are breathing right into your breastbone or right into your heart itself. Breathing in 1, 2, 3, 4. And out 4, 3, 2, 1. And in your own rhythm now. When you exhale and let all your breath out, I invite you to breathe out anxiety, stagnant energy, the fears and woes of the day. Breathing in smoothly into this very wise center that lives within each one of us. And out, exhaling the dross, is like a waste product, out our hearts, letting go. So let's put that breathing on automatic, and I'll go one step farther with you. As your breath smooths out and elongates, I invite you to bring to mind something, someone, or some place, some pet animal, or some beloved species that you unequivocally feel grateful for, feel appreciation for. Who or what is that place or thing or one? What comes to mind? Allow yourself to be surprised. It might be an elephant, or it might be the snow falling. It might be literally the color of your toenail polish that you just adore. Anything that you appreciate and love. And just focus on that positive feeling as you continue to breathe in to a count of 4 and out to a count of 4. And again, smoothly, as if now you are breathing in that sense of appreciation, gratitude, yumminess, positivity. Breathing it in through your heart and allowing it to spread through your body. Inhaling in appreciation, blessing, thanks, yes, your yes for life. And exhaling again, exhaling, tension, anxiety, stagnation, fear. To a count of 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, filling your head, your chest, your extremities, your pelvis with that goodness. And exhaling as well. To a count of 4. Now you can do this anytime, anywhere. That's what we're going to start with right now. Your physiological system has changed. Your coherence, this is called the quick coherence technique in heart math. It has shifted. Your brain rhythm and your heart rhythm have coordinated itself just with that little bit, and we'll go on. Thank you, Lisa.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Tirzah. We so need this kind of thing these days. So thank you for setting a space today for this. Yeah. So now we have the rest of our time together to dive into our viewers' questions for Tirzah as we prepare for her upcoming course. Again, that's called Find Healing and Resilience in Ancestral Wisdom. And again, it begins Monday, March 30th. And if you want to check out the website and learn more about the 7-week course, you can visit ancestralwisdomcourse.com to see the full description. So let's go ahead and get into some questions. If you have a question for Tirzah, go ahead and type it in, and I'll be happy to read it out loud. Otherwise, we've already got some questions lined up, some good ones. So let's go ahead and get started. Let's start with one from Gina, who wants to know, what types of difficulties do unresolved family traumas bring to our lives today?
Beautiful question. What kind of difficulties? Sometimes the anxiety that we're carrying, sometimes the feeling of being out of place in the world, or feeling isolated, or feeling like you don't belong in the world, or feeling like you have an underlying fear or anxiety. Sometimes that predated us. Sometimes we come in with that fear. Sometimes we come in with a sense of urgency. In my research, it has been astonishing to hear people who have had this sense, and I tell about this in my book, Wounds into Wisdom, people who have the sense of, you must tell me where you are when you're coming late, otherwise I don't know what to do. I start to go crazy. The anxieties that are based on things, and then they find out that their ancestors, their grandmother or even great-grandparent, has gone through some war experience or some horror, just the excruciating extreme life experiences that our ancestors went through, that formed this anxiety, this particular anxiety that is passed down to us. So I have lots of stories about that. It certainly could be physiological, but we call this an epigenetic residue, a residue of extreme life experiences. And there's all kinds of scientific data about this right now that is breaking breaking into the news, and it is extremely fascinating. But sometimes the things that we experience, the anxiousness and urgencies, and sometimes our depressions, are predated. They didn't begin with us.
Okay, thank you. Now, let's go ahead and just dive right into the topic of the day. So many people are asking about the coronavirus. We're all sort of in this whirlwind of craziness. And we've got people asking, how do we protect the young ones during the time of the coronavirus from passing on our trauma to their descendants?
That's a really important question, because this thing has come so fast and with such emotional turbulence, and who isn't feeling like I can barely stay on top of it? The numbers are rising, and we're all in a state of anxiety. And it's so important that we are using our spiritual practices, that we're working with friends and other positive support resources, using all of our tools to stay in a kind of equilibrium. There are studies that show in 2001, right after the Twin Towers went down, the children who were at home with their parents and who were blown over by the impact of this trauma, this collective trauma. The children who were in homes where the images kept repeating and repeating on TV and computers, and the ones whose parents were pulling their hair out and screaming or crying or extremely demonstrative about their upset, those are the children who are being treated for PTSD now. The same age group who grew up with parents who were keeping calm, who turned the television off, who were very matter of fact about, yes, things are happening, but we're okay. We're going to be okay. This is going to pass. And talking in ways that were slower cadence and without as much upset, those are children who are completely trauma-free. So I think we can afford now, 20 years later almost, to look at that data, at those studies, and say, okay, what can I do to keep myself fairly even, especially around my children, and use the tools, use all my spiritual tools, so that I can ground myself, I can pray or meditate or work in counsel, whatever it is that is my take brisk walks that can keep me grounded and resourced right now.
Okay, so what do you think then are the odds that the people who find it difficult to be calm, who just immediately panic, what are the odds that they are actually carrying ancestral trauma from their people?
It's possible. It is certainly possible. I know that after the effects of Charlottesville in 2017, that in that summer, when there were neo-Nazis who were marching through, and after the massacre in Pittsburgh last year, I guess that was in 2018, those were extreme, 2019, sorry, those were extreme traumas especially felt by people who had ancestors and who came from Holocaust lineage. And so I was getting, as a rabbi, I was getting many, many calls from people who were not barely Jewish identified, but these things, watching these things on television, on the screen, were activating something. It was like a cellular memory for them, and they had to do some work around it. So yes, we might feel that there is upset currently in our systems right now because we're watching the news, and that is just for now. But we also may have trauma in our lineages that is being called to the surface. So that is it's very possible.
Okay, thank you for addressing that. Let's take that and take a step sideways with the question. We've got one from Anna here who says, how do we transform survivors' shame or guilt? I'm the granddaughter of Holocaust survivors and also come from a lineage of war survivors, including myself. I assume that your course is going to be addressing this type of thing.
Survivor's guilt, absolutely. And the shame that we have of surviving horrible things when others haven't. Thanks for that question, Anna. I think that is really at the crux of what sent me into my research and into my personal journey. And I talk about that in Wounds into Wisdom as well. And it really took understanding that our ancestors are not gone. They are in the field. They're in the field that we call the ancestral plane. And some of them are very well, and some of them are very wise. And they are wanting to reach us. They're wanting to help us. They're wanting to guide us. And it all began with a dream that I had that woke me up to this work, in which, this is before I knew that I was that most of my family had been massacred in Austria and Hungary. And I had a dream of these skeleton women, these Hungarian, beautifully clad, but they were skeletons. I knew in the dream that they were dead, and they were talking to me and saying, you think we want you to suffer? Live the life we could not live. Live it fully, live it ebulliently, love your life. You can do it for us. You can live for us. And that dream turned everything on its head, and I started to realize, oh my God, there's a whole other dimension out there. So the ancestral healing work is really about contacting these amazing beings who are in our past, but who are not dead. Their consciousness lives on, and we can recruit their energies and recruit their wisdom, enlist them to be our guides. And they don't want us to be guilty or to be in paralysis or to be depressed. They want us to live because they were not able to live. And that's just a little story. There's so much more to say, and I'll be talking much more about that in the course.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. As you were talking, I was feeling a lot of my ancestors going, you can't be happy. So hearing you talking about those who do want us to be happy was such a refreshing change. We've got a question here from Melissa that sort of relates to that. Can unwell ancestors negatively affect our physical health?
Yes. Okay. That is such an important question. Sometimes we feel like someone's rattling around in the back room of our psyche, that there is or that we feel there's a drain or an undertow in our being, in our psychic energy. And absolutely, there are wise and well and beneficent ancestors, and there are also those who didn't complete life well, who died abruptly, who died violently, who died addicted, or who died because, in a way that was separated from loved ones. In so many of these cases, we have people whose lives, whose consciousness, their physical life ended, but their psycho-spiritual consciousness goes on. And just like those of us who are feeling addicted or feeling unwell in life. So when consciousness goes on, people we take those things with us. So those are the unwell ancestors. And when we do this work, we can actually affect change. We can affect change by helping them, by blessing them, by honoring them, by facing them and addressing them directly, and giving them a place through our attention and our love to come into the ancestral plane and be well, be ancestors. The rightful role of an ancestor is to help those who are earthlings, to help us who are in our bodies through our crises, to help us, to guard us and guide us and whisper their guidance into our intuition and into our subtle bodies. So our unwell ancestors can very greatly affect our nervous systems, our a sense of health, our sense of well-being, and our sense of deserving to be alive and present and effective and really flourishing in our lives. And so in this work, we address them, but not right away. First, like we just did in our heart math exercise, we capitalize on what is well and wise and good and essential by tapping into our appreciation and our gratitude. First, in this ancestral healing work, we always tap into the well and wise ancestors first. And we make sure that we have them, in a sense, enveloping us and protecting us. And then when we're ready at a certain point, we can start to do the work of helping the less well ancestors find their rightful place. Hope that makes sense. That's a lot. That's an earful, but the question is exactly addressed to this work. It's perfect.
All right. Yeah, it made perfect sense. Thank you so much for that. And of course, it leads into questions from, there are a lot of people actually asking about this. I'm glad that you brought up addictions. People are wondering, how does inherited trauma or experience relate to addiction? What are your findings in the work that you've done?
Well, an addiction is this deep sense of emptiness. We all have some form of addiction in our culture, whether it's work or food, substances, alcohol, sex, shopping, whatever it is, whatever our excesses are. And by the way, I feel that our excesses are really being addressed here with this coronavirus, because the stores are closed. We can't access things. So many of us are at home. We are online and on the phone, but many of us have a much smaller girth to operate from. And so we are at this moment having to look as a collective at our collective addictions and what it is that keeps us in excess. And so the empty self, the hungry self, is what we begin with in this work, and what will fill us up. How it is that we avoid being quiet, being with ourselves. What are the essential beliefs and attitudes behind that avoidance that keep us running, keep us overly active, keep us eating, keep us using. And we engage that empty self with love and with compassion, and hold that self, embrace that self, and bring in the love from ancestors and the help from ancestors and the help from each other, because this work really can't be done exclusively on our own. We need a community to do it, and that's one of the reasons why I'm so looking forward to this course, because we're going to be convening a community from around the world of people who are like-minded and like-hearted, and will be doing this work, this very personal work, but all together. So it really helps to have each other.
Absolutely. I agree. And in fact, we'll be talking about the Facebook group a little later, where we'll be able to interact with one another and share stories, et cetera, that type of thing. Now, you mentioned a dream earlier on, and so many people are also asking about that. They have had nightmares that don't relate to anything that they've ever experienced in their lives. How do you work with dreams to discover ancestral patterns? How do you know that they're ancestral patterns? Let's talk about dreams a little bit.
Well, dreams are one of my great loves. I've been following my own dreams for years and studying them since I was started being a student of Jung in my early 20s. I want to maybe tell you a story about a dream that is very powerful. It's the subject, or the dreamer, is a millennial aged woman who I worked with, And her dream was a repetitive dream that she had, and it was really the first memory that she had as in this lifetime. And in this dream, which she had as an infant, well, let me just say that each time she would have it, she would wake up in the middle of the night and cry. And her mother would rush in from her bedroom and hold her and rock her. And finally, at the age of 3 or 4, when she started to gain the access to language, she was able to tell her mother the story of this recurring dream. And in the dream, she sees herself flying around an old town, a wooden town made of wood with cobblestones. It's the same town each time. And every time she flies around and zeroes right into the train station. And at the train station, she sees the same scene again and again. And this scene is of a man running. First, he jumps from the platform into the tracks and runs on the tracks, chasing a train that is just departing. And he's running and running. And of course, he can't catch up. And he's extremely upset. And he's crying and yelling after the train. And he cannot catch up. And then the little girl wakes up. And finally, at the age of 3 or 4, she tells her mother what she has dreamt, and her mother starts to cry. And her mother is holding her and saying, "How could you know? How could you know? That's exactly what happened to your grandfather," who, by the way, she had never met. This was his first family that had departed on that train. He had come home from bartering for food on the black market and seen his door wide open. His family was gone. The Gentile neighbors were all around saying, "They just took your family to the train station. Run, maybe you can catch up with them." And he runs to the train station, jumps from the platform into the tracks and chases the train and never catches up and never sees his family again. So this young woman is somehow engraved with this. Her soul, her psyche is just engrooved with this dream, this very deep pain of her ancestor, her grandfather, and it has landed in her. And she hasn't done nothing, but here she is with this enormous pain and grief and upset. And to her credit, this young woman joined they call it a 3G or 3-gen Holocaust survivors circle, and which these are grandchildren of Holocaust survivors who discuss things like this, who discuss these dreams, who discuss what it is that has landed in them of no responsibility of their own, no fault of their own, and how they work these things, how they take these legacies of trauma and work them so that they can unpack this trauma, which her grandfather in his lifetime was never fully able to do. So when something lands in us, we have the tools to unpack it and to unfold it and work with it and bring consciousness and compassion to it and to allow it to heal in the light of day and the light of our loving consciousness. So that's just a story. Yes, this is a phenomenon. We have all kinds of epigenetic data from studies now. We do not know how nightmares are transmitted, but they are. And so sometimes we are having the dreams of others. And I see that as the psyche of the family, the soul of the family begging for a conscious descendant to heal what has come before. And that is a great privilege, and it's one that many of us who have inherited these legacies have, that we can do. We can affect those changes. We can affect that healing, and we can in a sense heal retroactively our ancestors and their traumatic past. And of course, whatever we do, whatever the healing is that we do, whether it's past, present, we are affecting change for our children as well.
All right. Wow. Such an amazing story. Thank you for sharing that. For those of you who are just joining us, we're here with Rabbi Tirzah Firestone, learning about her upcoming course, Find healing and resilience in ancestral wisdom, which begins Monday, March 30th. And you can log on to ancestralwisdomcourse.com for all the details and to register. Let's get back into this. You just mentioned that the ancestors are sometimes waiting for somebody who's in their skin right now to be the one to help heal the generational trauma. And we've got a question here from Tara who says, I've been told by several healers and psychics and the cards that I draw for myself that I am here to heal an ancestral wound. And my own intuition tells me that the wound runs through the female line and that I will be teaching or sharing the process to help heal others. What's the best way to align myself with my ancestors and find the path to shift this wound?
Tamara, thank you. That is such a big question. I think that's what the course is all about, and that's what my work is all about. There are so many ways, and that could be ritual, where we're literally opening the ancestral plane and addressing our ancestors. It is working with our bodies in ways to understand that our bodies have inherited somatic information, psychosomatic information, and that we need to release it. We also work with genograms, which are multi-generational family maps, and that is another way to open the ancestral plane and look at the patterns that have passed down, in your case, through the female lineage. What are those emotional patterns? What are those relationship patterns? What are those medical patterns or psycho-emotional patterns that have transferred from generation to generation? And how have they transferred? And what is it? What is the sort of the task or the information that we are, as Vamek Volkan would say, a great traumatologist, that we are the reservoir for? So there are many, many modalities that we use to address those patterns. And just your question alone is halfway there. It's just saying, in Hebrew we say hineni, here I am, really standing in our human capacity, our spiritual capacity as spiritual beings that happen to be on Earth right now. We have such a privilege and such power to heal backwards and to heal forwards. And so we say yes. We say, here I am. I'm ready. I'm ready for the job. And it is really it's a brilliant task that many of us have ahead of us. And it can also be enjoyable. It's not drudgery. It's very, very energizing and powerful.
It absolutely is. I agree with you on that one. It's like solving a mystery. It's like a big Scooby-Doo story. Yeah, I'm with you there. Another question we're getting, I think more than any other question we're getting, is what if I don't know who my people are through either family secrets, adoption, inability to look up family lineage on Ancestry.com? What if I have no idea who I'm working with?
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's a very common question. And it's, again, an incredible case of sleuthing that we're doing. We're putting on our Sherlock hats to do this, but there are ways. And I have heard incredible stories from students who have looked up Ancestry.com, looked up Genie.com, done 23andMe, have discovered cousins and then contacted the cousins and found out all kinds of things that want to be revealed. So there is that strategic, logistical way of getting online and doing research. And there are many things online that you may not be aware of, that you don't know yet. But there's also listening internally. It's as if we're putting our ear to the ground and listening to our dreams, listening for information, doing active imagination, which is a Jungian technique that I'll be teaching in the course, which is to really be opening the field and contacting ancestors, whether or not we know their names. One young man who is a student and a dear, dear friend that I work with is someone who was his father was a sperm donor, and the records are sealed. He will never ever find out who his father is, and yet he is gradually feeling into that lineage and feeling what is from his mother's side and what is from his father's side, and over the last couple of years has found out a great deal. So it is possible. It is possible, and there are different ways of psychically accessing this information.
Okay, I'm sure that's very helpful to a large number of people, because again, that's the most frequently asked question here. We've got a question here from Ren, who wants to know, how far back can ancestral trauma actually go?
Some teachers of ancestral healing, and there are many lineages of teachings right now, say that it can go back hundreds and even 1,000 years. And that sometimes we have to go back that far to find a well ancestor, because the last 200 years have been so, in a way, freighted with the Industrial Revolution and war and bloodshed and immigration, that sometimes we do have to find our well ancestors literally hundreds of years back, tens of generations back. So it does go back quite far, Ren, and we will not have the names of those people. In most cases, 99.9%, we will not be able to get back that far. Few families have that much information, but that's where the intuitive work begins, is to see and to really use the power of our intuition to plumb those lineages.
All right, thank you. This is, again, another frequently asked question. A lot of people are asking, what are your thoughts on generational curses? A lot of people are using the word with quotation marks, or jinxes, that kind of thing, just being passed on through generation after generation. And they seem to be real because something's very wrong here.
Yes, it's, in our culture, we don't use that word. That is just a booga word. But in other cultures, let's go down to South America. We hear that all the time, that there's been a spell cast or a curse made. And people regularly discuss that, and that is just part of the culture. In our culture, it is just not used, but I do believe that there are we are very powerful beings. And when somebody is hurt and it just wants to lash out, or there is a jealousy or a competition, or there is some thwarted, very, very big thwarted feeling, thwarted desire or anger, that can be channeled, literally channeled into, with the power of our minds and our emotions, into darkness, which when that is not revealed, when it's not unpacked, when it's not depotentized, it passes down. And that's, I would say that we shouldn't poo-poo that. I think that those spells, magic, and curses really do exist. Again, I would say that by honoring, first facing, and then honoring and thanking our ancestors, we can start to dispel some of those curses. And what I mean by that is sometimes anger and these powerful emotions are really just a deep-seated feeling of not having been recognized. We were unrecognized. We were not honored. We were not asked or invited. And so we built up this terrible dark cloud around us, which we cast onto somebody else. But by recognizing and honoring our ancestors, whether or not we know the exact story, and sometimes that does get revealed, we can start to again, depotentize that buildup. I hope that makes sense.
I think that was probably the most perfect explanation of that I've ever heard. Thank you for taking the question seriously, because a lot of people do feel kind of silly or poo-pooed by even believing that this kind of thing is real, and the way that you explained it is just perfect. Thank you. Thank you for that. So I'm looking at the clock here. We do have time for a few more questions here, but before we take any more questions, I want to give a few details about the course itself. Again, it's called Find Healing and Resilience in Ancestral Wisdom. And this is going to be truly a life-changing 7-week journey with Tirzah and her expert guidance, where you'll call on your ancestors to help you clear anxiety, depression, and stuckness passed down through generations, and for greater resilience and the freedom to live your soul's purpose. And the 7-week course takes place on Mondays at 4 p.m. Pacific, starting Monday, March 30th. And as I mentioned earlier, if you can't join us live, that's fine. You won't miss out on the teachings, because you will receive audio and video recordings, transcripts, and all course handouts on your course homepage. Also, I'd like to remind everyone that we offer a no-risk money-back guarantee on all of our courses, giving you a full 2 weeks until April 13th in this case, to make sure that you absolutely love it. And as an added option, as we mentioned earlier, all participants are welcome to connect in a private Facebook community group, so you can connect with one another, share stories, and as I mentioned, it's private, so you don't have to worry about the whole world seeing what you're talking about. It's just a great way to communicate with each other. Also, everyone who registers receives the Ancestral Wisdom bonus collection. And first, you'll receive a video dialogue with Tirzah and Terry Real entitled Intergenerational Trauma Transmission. And then you'll get an audio dialogue with Tirzah and myself from the recent Ancestral Healing Summit called Healing Our Family Legacies and Changing the World. And when you register by midnight Pacific on Thursday, March 19th, you will receive this extra gift that is an ebook by Tirzah entitled The Woman's Kabbalah, Ecstatic Jewish Practices for Women. All right, so before we get back into questions, Tirzah, let me ask, what are you most looking forward to sharing in your upcoming course? I know there's a lot to talk about, but what are you most excited about?
Oh, so much. I think that in this course, I am pulling together so many of my loves and the strands that I have been of research that I have been working on for decades. So we have, it's going to be drawing on the ancient wisdom from Kabbalah or Kabbalah, Jewish mysticism. It's going to be drawing upon Jungian psychology, also called depth psychology. And that includes dreams and active imagination. It's going to be drawing on neuroscience and present tense, amazing research, amazing stories that I will be sharing. So all of these things, but I think every day right now, living through this collective trauma that is unfolding before our eyes, I am feeling so fortunate to be convening this circle, because all of us are able to, from different parts of the world and from our individual places, able to tap into a community online, which helps us to break out of a sense of isolation, helps us to have strength to do this deep healing work, gives us support. I'm excited to meet all of you who are going to be signing up for this course, and I can't think of a better time that we can come together in a circle. I see this as a community, a healing community that will really, as Lisa said, this is life-changing work. I take this so seriously, and will be also tuning into my own higher guidance as the 7 weeks unfold, so that the material is as uniquely, particularly attuned to the circle that convenes together at the end of the month. All
right, great. I'm looking forward to it, that's for sure. Let's go ahead and get back into some questions here. We've got one from Lynn here who wants to know, is there a connection between the work that you do and shamanic work or family constellation work?
Great question, Lynn. Yes, I do in-person ancestral constellation work. I call it ceremonial family constellation. It comes through a lineage that I learned from my teacher, Jill Peirce, who's from Great Britain. And that is more in person. It is shamanic work. I don't use that word readily, but since you're asking, it is certainly tapping into different dimensions. Now that's not online. That is in person, but much of that work is informing our course. And the shamanic work really means penetrating to different levels of consciousness and to different dimensions. And doing that I do that through ritual and through prayer. Each meeting of our course, each of the modules will begin with prayer. We'll set the field, even though we're online, we can do that. Set the field in a holy way, in a sacred way, so that we are in a kind of ritual space through which we will be able to connect with ancestral wisdom and ancient deep wisdom that is coming to us. So yes, this work, you can say it is shamanic. I don't put that in my website or in my advertising or publicity. I don't consider myself a shaman, but the work is absolutely multi-dimensional and very, very sacred. Thank you for asking that question.
Thank you for addressing it. It's an important one. Here's a question from Laura who wants to know, how can this course help me or my children who range from 22 to 30 years when the trauma and anxiety was passed on to my children when I was less aware of the ramifications?
That's such a good question. I also have that age children, 30 and in that age range. I know that as I change, as I transform myself with this work, as I become more compassionate to what has come through me and who I used to be. There are many, let's just say there are many incarnations within one incarnation. I've lived many selves in this one life by the time I hit this age. And maybe that's true for you too, as a mother of 20 and 30-year-olds. So as we transform ourselves and heal ourselves, we are setting a field that ripples out to our children. Whether they live with us or not, they feel our changes, and they can be changed thereby. I truly believe that there are these levels of transformation are translated and communicated subtly. And doors open. As my doors begin to open, my children start to say things that are very aware and, oh, I didn't know you knew that. Certainly, I didn't tell you that, but somehow they pick it up in the ethers because my field has changed. My field has become more clear, more compassionate, more aware, more self-aware. So it does go, the healing goes retroactive and also forward as well. And it's a nonlinear phenomenon that is very, very special.
All right, thank you for that. Let's see, a couple of different people asking about this. For example, Marion says, I believe in this and also in reincarnation. How does one affect the other?
That's great. That question gets asked almost in every ancestral healing retreat because both are true. I believe, to me anyway, that our souls are evolving through a long, long journey, and we have many opportunities to polish our souls. So in reincarnations, many incarnations, I do believe that's true. We don't have much evidence of that, and we don't have much. It's very, very difficult to study that. And so the epigenetic work, however, the ancestral work is evidence-based, and we can study it. We can do our intergenerational work and study what has happened historically through our particular lineages. And so we usually do not mix those two. We stay in this evidence-based work. However, you might say that the same themes that are prevalent in my genetic and epigenetic transmission from my bloodline are still also prevalent in my soul's journey, and that I incarned in a family, within a family, where the challenges and the conditions were present that I could work on my soul's incarnational issues. So there's a confluence from the two dimensions, intergenerational as well as reincarnational, but we try to, in this work, and at any rate, we try to stay within one that's a little bit more evidence-based. I hope that makes sense. It's hard to talk about these things because there are different dimensions of the same thing, different frequencies of the same thing, same healing.
Plus, we only just have a few minutes to even just sort of scratch the surface. So thank you for scratching the surface on the topic. That was appreciated. Now, another one that we've got people asking, let me just sort of bring it all together. People are wondering about the different cultures. If they aren't from like if somebody's from a Native American culture, or somebody's from the indigenous Australian Aborigines, how can they all sort of come together under one umbrella and work through their own with other people who don't share their culture?
Oh, it's so very important because this work is multicultural. It is not for just Westerners. It's not for just African Americans or Jews, or it is for every culture. In a sense, we could say that Aboriginal peoples, indigenous peoples around the world who have suffered such trauma, African Americans and Black people who have suffered, who have endured forced migrations or just discrimination when they immigrate. We have all endured historical traumas. And so in a sense, we're all in this together. We all are at a critical point in world history in which the buck is stopping here. And we're suffering, not as a people, but as a globe. We're suffering globally. Humanity is suffering wherever you live. It is impossible now, we're learning, certainly through the coronavirus, to stay untouched. Nothing is inviolable. It doesn't matter how much money you have or how privileged you are. We are all in the same boat together. And all of us are carrying the trauma of oppression, of being oppressed, or also being oppressors. And so now it has snowballed to a point where we, those who are conscious, those who are awake, those who are aware, can say, here is my lineage. I must do some healing because the planet depends upon it. And so it doesn't matter who we are, really. The work is universal. And this work is, in a sense, it transcends any particular, and that goes back to the question about the shamanism. When you touch and penetrate these different dimensions, you are penetrating the source, the wellspring of humanity. And so it is utterly universal, this work, and it applies to all of us. And in a sense, we could say that it's critical for all of our lineages, all of us, no matter what our bloodline is or are, to be doing this work.
Okay, thank you for addressing that too. We have time for one more quick question here. Well, there's no such thing as a quick question, but Sherry is asking, what about people who are frozen and can't love when the parents and grandparents seem to be like that too? Could that be from ancestral trauma?
Absolutely. So Sherry is asking a really important question. That kind of frozenness comes from something. Some there's some way that something got shut down, and we call that dissociation, or that's often is a residue of trauma, when we just shut down our emotions because something was so painful it could not be metabolized. So you absolutely want to do this work and start to very delicately and compassionately peel back the layers. Where did that start? And what were the life conditions that were so extreme that and so traumatic that shut down the heart of the ancestry? Yes, I absolutely invite you to do this work to warm that back up so that you can claim your heart again.
Okay, thank you for that. We're just about out of time here. This has been a fascinating hour, Tirzah. You know that ancestral healing is a passion of mine, so I would love to just keep you on the horn for hours, but we're not able to do that today. I want to thank our viewers for being with us and for all of your fantastic questions. Once again, Find Healing and Resilience in Ancestral Wisdom starts Monday, March 30th. And again, you can visit ancestralwisdomcourse.com to learn more and to register. So before we go, Tirzah, do you have any final words for our viewers?
I'm very impressed. I really love the questions that came in. Thanks to all of you. And it just feel like the field is forming and that the group is forming, our community is convening, and I hope you'll take part. I am excited. I'm excited to meet all of you and to hear your stories and to share the riches that I have for you.
All right. Wow. Well, thank you again, Rabbi Tirzah Firestone. It's been such a delight speaking with you today. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you so much, Lisa.
You bet. And once again, thank you to everyone who joined us today. On behalf of all of us at the Shift Network, I wish you well and look forward to having you on this course or perhaps another one in the future. Have a great day, everyone.